And then I looked at, was the tomb empty? And I found that even the enemies of Jesus admitted it was empty. They conceded it was empty. How? Because when the disciples began proclaiming that Jesus had risen, what the opponents said was, or what they didn't say was, baloney, go open the tomb, you'll find the body. They didn't say that. What they said was, the disciples stole the body. Well, that's a cover story. That's like a student coming up to a teacher and saying, the dog ate my homework. He's admitting he doesn't have the homework. He's just saying, the dog ate my homework. It's the same thing. They're conceding implicitly that the tomb was empty. And then finally, another powerful category of evidence, eyewitnesses. We have 9 sources confirming and corroborating the conviction of the disciples that they encountered the resurrected Jesus. 9 ancient sources inside and outside the New Testament, confirming and corroborating their conviction that they encountered the risen Christ. That is an avalanche of historical data.
Yeah.
One of the guys who I used to admire was a man who was renowned as the most successful defense attorney who ever lived. He was knighted twice by Queen Elizabeth. He was a member of the Supreme Court of his land. And he was a skeptic about the resurrection. But he did what I did. He took his legal training and investigated the historical record. And John, I will recite to you one sentence he wrote that summarized his conclusion. He said, I say unequivocally that the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ is so overwhelming that it compels acceptance by proof, which leaves absolutely no room for doubt.
No room for doubt.
That's Sir Lionel Luckhoo, and he ended up spending the rest of his life proclaiming the gospel of Jesus, that it's true, that Jesus returned from the dead. He proved he's the Son of God.
Yeah, now you're listening and you're reading all of this, you're interviewing people, and the fact is it's piling up, piling up, piling up. You're still an atheist.
Yeah, I am.
So where's it going?
It came down to November the 8th of 1981. And I said, you know what? A good juror reaches a verdict. The evidence was in. After 2 years of researching this stuff, the evidence was in. I needed to reach a verdict. So I sat down with all the documents and all the papers and all the books, and I started to just review them all and go through all the stuff. And then I stopped. And I sat back and I said, wait a minute. In light of the avalanche of evidence that points so powerfully toward the truth of Christianity, I realized it would take more faith to maintain my atheism than to become a Christian.
Right.
In other words, it was like the scales just went whoomp.
Right.
And that's when I reached my verdict in the case for Christ, that based on the evidence, I was convinced that Jesus didn't just claim to be the Son of God, he backed up that claim by returning from the dead.